Good afternoon, everybody. The International Parking Mobility Institute is pleased to present today's sponsored learning lab, Reestablish Community on University Campuses, sponsored by Transloc. My name is Justin Grunert, and I'll be assisting Sam Veraldi Cap in moderating today's webinar. As a reminder, today's presentation is being recorded, and we will make the recording available within a few days. Before we get started, I want to just go over a few quick housekeeping rules for today. All participants' microphones are being muted. We ask that you stay on mute throughout the presentation. For phone participants, please press *6 to mute your line. We invite all attendees with a webcam and are comfortable doing so to please turn on your camera. If you have questions for today's speakers, please feel free to queue it up at any time by typing it into the chat. To access the chat, click on the chat icon in the Zoom menu. A chat window will open up. Please type your question and click send. We will repeat these in a little bit when we get to the Q&A portion. And now it's my pleasure to introduce today's moderator. Sam Veraldi Cap is a Senior Strategic Policy Specialist at Transloc, part of Ford's mobility portfolio. With nearly 20 years of experience in the parking and transportation industry, providing leadership in the campus and private sector spaces, he is now one of Transloc's resident policy experts, where he uses his talents to help guide company strategy to improve equity and access in transit technology. His unique blend of experience spans multiple areas, including leading world-class universities, municipalities, and airports. Sam has also spent the last 25 years as an instructor at Duke University, where he currently teaches managerial finance, municipal finance, and strategy. Sam, welcome to the Learning Lab. The audience is all yours.
Thanks so much, Justin. Certainly appreciate it. Well, thanks everyone for attending our webinar today. Scott and I hope that you find the topic and the material an indication of the future landscape and initiatives being pursued by universities, colleges, as well as our cities. Today's discussion has elements of urban design, urban planning, mobility, and accessibility in mind. There are 4 themes that will resonate today throughout our discussion, and I'd like to quote them from the strategic plan from the University of Florida. The new city, proximity, strong neighborhoods, and stewardships. As we think about the city, the following presentation addresses topics including income opportunity, workforce development, demographic shifts, entrepreneurship, health, food, housing, transit, technology, schools, arts, and the culture. Recognizing that proximity is essential for the knowledge economy, the university will recenter growth by concentrating future development on the eastern third of campus and coordinate with the city to encourage development between downtown and the campus. Supporting strong neighborhoods around the university will sustain the University of Florida with the city and its neighborhoods to strengthen the pride of place by listening to the community needs and collaborating on shared objectives. The university must actively promote the stewardship of its environment, an infrastructure framework based on enhancing open spaces and key ecological corridors will enable strategic growth that fosters preeminence for the city as well as the campus. Before we get started today, I'd like to make a shout out. I would like to give a shout out to our IPMI colleagues, specifically Justin Grunert and Rachel Yolka. I've had the pleasure of working with Justin on the CAP board, CAP education, and various educational offerings. He's a phenomenal resource. And he reminded me today to make sure that if you are going to submit your CAP recertification package, get it to him by November. Don't wait till December. Get it done early. Well, what can I say about Rachel? She's a colleague, a friend, a thought leader in this industry. I've had the pleasure of serving with Rachel on the research committee, and she has been a leader in the great transformation that has occurred at IPMI. And by the way, she said, if you haven't signed up to go to Tampa yet, please get your registrations done immediately. So it looks like we're getting pretty good attendance on the poll here, or pretty good responses on the poll. So All right, there we go. So as we can see, most of the folks are here from the university sector, about 56%. That's great. A lot to learn today and understand. Hopefully we get a lot of questions from you all on that, and 20% from consultants and 20% from vendors. So thanks so much, Justin. All right, let's go to the next page. Today we're going to cover a series of things, but introductions, and I'll introduce my esteemed colleague here in a minute. We'll talk a little bit about the background of this project and how it has shaped some of my personal thinking and some of my professional thinking. We'll talk today about 3 specific areas that are changes to the University of Florida campus. And then we'll close out with some of the things and how that's affected Scott and the transportation and services group there. So I'd like to take this time to introduce Scott. Scott Fox is a parking and transportation professional with extensive experience in both public service and private industry. He currently serves in higher education at the University of Florida, a 2,200-acre land grant institution with 24,000 spaces in 14 parking structures and about 100 surface lots. Colleagues know Scott as self-directed, analytical, ethically grounded leader with a collaborative style. He brings authentic passion, positive energy, and proven ability to drive complex business systems to success in a high-demand environment. His personal commitment to maintaining consistent standards of excellence for the overall customer experience inspires the same enthusiasm in others. Scott has served 2 terms as president of Florida Parking and Transportation Association, followed by 23 years of active membership and 4 terms on the board of directors. He pioneered the world's first LEED Gold certified parking structure, the Southwest Parking Garage Complex, which opened in 2009 to prestigious awards from the International Parking Institute, the Florida Parking Association, the Associated General Contractors of Greater Florida. In 2010, it was inducted into the National Building Museum's House of Cars exhibition in Washington, D.C. Scott holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in English from Muhlenberg College and has earned professional accreditation as a certified administrator of public parking from the University of Virginia and the International Parking and Mobility Institute. Scott, welcome. Any words that you'd like to share before we get started?
Pleasure to be here. Welcome to all of my university colleagues and everyone else who's here. Thanks.
Great. All right, Justin, we can go to the next slide. So as Justin mentioned, I've been now going into my 25th year on campus at Duke University, and I've seen this trend happening in a number of places. And for those of you that don't know, I am also another shout out to the University of Florida. I'm finishing my master's degree in urban planning there. And there's just been some trends that have been alarming and really exciting to me at the same time. And some of the things that we've noticed on campuses that students are relying less and less on food halls and common areas, leaving behind the sense of community that these spaces used to create. Now, at Duke University, we have approximately 21 food trucks on campus, and most of the students make their way to not the dining hall, but to a flyby to pick up whatever it is they're going to grab before their classes or their next event on campus. This has just been emphasized even more with COVID-19. On a personal matter, I have attended Duke University campus once in the last year, as all of my classes have been remote. So there is not much activity on campus unless you're an athlete or doing research on campus, and most of the faculty are not on campus. And hopefully we get to do the next part, which is we are now going to be challenged with institutions figuring out how to bring students back together and reignite the university communities. Some universities are beginning to tackle this issue by prioritizing common spaces in the hearts of campuses, with the hope of bringing students back together. This is being achieved through a number of ways. Increased flexibility by reducing vehicle reliance, reducing the number of bus stops on campus, deploying on-demand rides, and closing the core campus to allow only pedestrians, bicycles, scooters, and allowing students to gather with ease. Now, that last point is what we're going to focus the majority of our discussion on today. and you'll see some of those examples. Next page. This is an actual quote from the strategic plan at the University of Florida. The strategic development plan seeks to define a path to enhance preeminence for the University of Florida and its host community. The plan will prepare the University of Florida in Gainesville for the future, identify ways to optimize growth, intensity and density, economic viability, and livability, looking beyond the horizon of the current 10-year campus master plan, both in scope and in vision. Next slide, please, Justin. As part of the strategic plan, this is a summary of the activities. For those of you that are consultants who have been involved in a strategic plan, some of these seem to be fairly routine. There were about 100 firsthand interviews that were collected as part of this process. Considerations in those interviews, and not limited to, departments in areas of ecology, demographics, historic growth patterns, transportation, land use, and building use. The University of Florida also benchmarked University and Gainesville against peer institutions and their host communities, with a specific focus on residency, enrollments, space allocation, density, research expenditures, and the presence of a +1 in the community, whether a government institution, a major corporate headquarters, a state capital, or another major university. Some of the specific findings in the interviews that were conducted and the part of the planning process was that Gainesville's natural systems are an important resource for the community, and the outdoor places are among the community's most noted and beloved amenities. Gainesville has the second lowest density among peer institutions, host communities, which has implications of kinds for the connections and collaborations essential for a vital university and a vital community. Last, the city faces a number of challenges that the university can help address in order to advance the joint success of the university and the city. Next slide, please. I'm not going to read this all to you, but I want to make sure that you understand there's 3 big themes. We talked about the 4 at the beginning. So recentering Gainesville, as we talked about, which is the growth and development around the university, where the university meets the city to improve the overall strategy, to unite Gainesville with the communities. And that's a really, really important process, not just for academic institutions, but also for our municipalities. And it will strengthen the university in the community as whole. Finally, to sustain the community by promoting social, personal, economic, and ecological health will enable the long-term success for the university and the city. Next page, please, sorry. Scott, why don't you tell us a little, this is a rendition from the strategic plan about what this is going to look like. Can you share a little bit with us what Tigert Hall at Court and 13th looks like today before this rendition?
Thanks, I can. I'm blown away when I look at this rendition because I've lived in this area. I've lived at this university for 23 years. This area looks profoundly different from the rendering you see. It functions as the primary entry and exit to our campus from the northeast. So it really is a throughway today, with cars and buses going through to campus destinations. We even have foreign traffic cutting through our campus all day long using this area. It has very definite traffic peaks. So, we feel the rush hour in the morning and we feel the rush hour in the evening. And it's a disorderly mix of transportation uses. So in addition to the buses and cars, there are cyclists and people on skateboards and on scooters and e-scooters, without a whole lot of structure and organization around how all those modes move together through this corridor. There is an attendant booth at the entrance so that we can greet visitors and we can do our best to direct cars that choose to stop there to their destinations. This whole area very much has the look and feel of a back of house area. It feels like a service corridor. And yet this is a major gateway to the academic core and the historic district of our campus. So this project that Sam will show you is really transformational.
Great, thanks, Scott. I appreciate that. And so now, as you can see with this rendition with the monument or sculpture accommodating visiting parking along the periphery, and encouraging obviously a more friendly and pedestrian-free area. So next page, please. Scott, tell us a little bit about Innovation Square before this rendition.
Sure. This area, Innovation Square, has been or was a somewhat depressed part of town as the student population has migrated away from that area to newer and fancier apartment complexes to the west of our campus. That student migration necessitated a greater investment on our part in transit to connect those students via bus to the campus. And this area that is now Innovation Square was really a lost opportunity zone that sits between the university and the downtown area. It was beginning to feel a little bit rundown and seedy and maybe a little bit unsafe, you know, the part of town that you kind of wanted to move through quickly. And it's astounding to me that that was the case, since real estate within close proximity to the university you'd think should be in high demand and available for some greater use, but for some reason it wasn't, and for a very long time until the Innovation Square model came up.
That's great. And so now there's going to be the Tumblein Creek Park, reinforcing the east-west movement between campus and downtown with a really green corridor, and active ground floor uses, and a pedestrian bike-friendly street landscape. This is an incredible transition for that area, knowing what you were talking about before, Scott. So we look forward to this as well. Next page, please. Scott, how about University Avenue and the mixed-use corridor, which is now this new rendition?
Sure. Well, even though we have a main street in our town, as the name suggests, University Avenue is kind of like the main street for our campus. The university is on one side and restaurants and drinking establishments are on the other side. But over the years, I've heard criticisms from the community that the university tends to turn its back on the community. We build for inside and we don't really put on a good face for the community. Because the university is sort of on one side and rather closed off, and the community resides on the other side, it's not the most seamless or welcoming handshake, I guess, between the two entities. It's also an area that's been highly scrutinized recently because in the last year or so, there have been 2 recent pedestrian fatalities. So it's clearly an area that's been asking for something for a long time.
Well, great. Now we're going to have a great mixed use project with 4 to 5 stories of top retail and restaurants fronting the tree lined sidewalks. Can really encourage visitation to campus. And there's also going to be a fixed route transit system that could catalyze demand for spaces and provide easy access to the downtown area and campus. So it's really exciting to see this with the street front with fewer curb cuts that would promote an attractive and safe pedestrian experience. So next slide, please, Justin. Okay, we're missing some of those questions. So Scott, let me ask you a few questions, if I may. I know this was an incredible transition, and you probably have had some frustrations and some things that have come up. But can you tell us about this transformation and the number of studies that were taking place simultaneously and how you were engaged in that?
Sure. I mentioned that I've been here 23 years. I've seen transition in administration, and I've seen different visions come and go. But I must say this was unprecedented. There was a truly unprecedented commitment to investing in developing a vision for the future of our campus that wasn't a 5-year vision or a 10-year vision, but really was looking 30, 40, and 50 years out. And we went into the process with a philosophy that everything was on the table. You know, the wacky ideas that you might dismiss today, well, let's talk them out and think them through. The university hired a leading consultant to deliver this strategic development plan in 2017 and followed up with commitments to a landscape master plan and a transportation and parking strategic study that were both delivered the next year in 2018. And I think some truly great things have come out of them, as a couple of those things you've demonstrated here. As for me as the parking director, I can tell you that I've been grateful to have been considered a key stakeholder in all of these studies and have had the opportunity to be at the table every step of the way, because more often than not, we're given ideas and told to implement them. And as many of you probably know, sometimes the things that sound really great in the conference room, or look really like a home run on the design table, can be really tough to translate into action. The kind of things that your stakeholders loved and supported in the conference room when they were being interviewed back in 2016 and 2017, like closing a portion of your campus to all traffic and pushing parking out to the perimeters. They loved that in the conference room, but now you've got to see if they have the same passion when it's time to close their roads and move their parking. So we're the ones that have to deal with it where the rubber meets the road. And I think because we've been at the table, we've really been able to drive the most important element of this, which is messaging. I mean, we've seen all this coming for some time, so we've been able to help craft the message to our community and successfully push for a series of messages to keep people informed. So when the time comes and the inconvenience comes, they've had a glimpse at this grand vision, and frequently a glimpse at this grand vision. So we'll get some buy-in and some understanding and help get us past those inconvenient times. And from everything I've seen, it's really going to be beautiful.
Well, that sounds great, Scott. So tell us a little bit about the phases and how it's affected your team.
That's an interesting question. As far as affecting our team, I think it's affecting our team the way it will affect the entire campus community, which is, yes, we've heard about this. Yes, we all know this is coming, but we'll believe these roads really close when we see it. And, we'll believe these parking lots will really move when that happens. We'll believe that you'll truly take this academic core of campus and make it a truly auto-free zone when we see it happen. Now, those of us who are involved, we know it's really coming, and it's not just a plan on paper. It's coming. We know that the first phase will begin on August 16th. So we are preparing to move parking around and change access. But I think that there will be some culture shock, even to the members of my staff, when you can't get here from there the way you used to.
Scott, specifically, how has it affected the transportation portion of campus?
Well, it hasn't yet, but it's about to. Particularly when we look at our bus system. We have a pretty robust bus system that before the COVID decline in transit, we were moving about just under 10 million passenger trips a year, truly extraordinary numbers. And because we're not going to be able to provide that bus service into the core anymore, because this will now be a walking campus, this will be closed to buses and cars, we're going to have to try and create that first mile, last mile connection another way, whether it's with bicycles or e-scooters or promoting and encouraging people to use this walking campus that we're providing for them. But there's no question it's going to create a new way of thinking and a new way of getting around and about campus.
Scott, a project of this magnitude is incredible over an extended period of time. How do you keep your staff and keep the phases that you're trying to accommodate with the wishes of the university all together and to keep the team organized and focused?
Well, we're not leaders in this. So I'm happy to tell you that others are taking the lead in that. For me, what's been most important is that I think my university colleagues will appreciate that when there's inconvenience in transit or parking, it's our fault, and the target is on us. And I believe we've done a very good job, forgive me for repeating this, but of communicating the vision and letting people know that this is not a transportation and parking induced inconvenience. It is a positive step toward a grand vision that will be worth the inconvenience that it will take to get there. So taking that target off of our collective backs at Transportation and Parking Services, as perhaps personal as that sounds, is significant for our team.
Scott, we all know that parking and transportation is the as you said, it's one of the more visceral aspects of any university setting, right? So you're going to get that cannon fire coming in. But so what has been the preliminary reaction from students, staff, and faculty at the university of some of the things that you are trying to accommodate from this plan?
Sam, it's not happened yet. Even though we've put out the word and have gotten some mild feedback from it at various phases as these projects have evolved, we're bracing for what happens when the impact happens. I don't think that we're going to feel the real pushback until August 16th when the first impact is experienced. So we're bracing for that. You know, we have some answers crafted. We think we've done some good communication, but there will be some people who didn't hear about it, don't understand what harebrained scheme this is and what lunatics approved this project to move forward. So we'll deal with some of that. But I really think that the message is already crafted. Where the messengers will continue to present it. And speaking personally, I can present it with honesty and integrity, that I think this is a tremendous thing that we're doing for our campus. I'm in.
Great, that's good to hear. Well, Justin, I think we've gone through the questions on a formal basis that we'd like to with Scott. Can we open it up to the floor, please?
Be happy to do so. So thank you very much for everyone. Please make sure if you have questions for Scott and Sam to please type them into the chat, and we will get to as many questions as time allows for. So the first question actually came from Stephanie Taylor. Her question is, how does reducing the number of bus stops prioritize common spaces in the heart of campus? Aren't there concerns with access for all?
I'll take it, Sam. There absolutely is concern about access for all. We're concerned about how essential service vehicles will provide service to the buildings that are in the campus core. We're concerned about how to get disabled people to their destinations. We're concerned about deliveries and emergency vehicles. And we've got a high-level team that's working on a couple of different strategies right now. We may create a meandering service road that doesn't really look like a road, that would be used for essential purposes only. Our university has not invested deeply in golf carts as other universities have, but we're considering that investment as well. But you've asked a great question that we're concerned about. Right now, we think we have a strategy to get those people close to their destinations, but we are not going to be able to provide the door-to-door service to some of these locations that we have historically.
Sam, you're on mute if you're trying to respond.
No, I was just going to say, Scott, the other thing I forgot to ask you was, you know, the swamp in football season is an incredible area, right? And I know that you have a number of other events, and the University of Florida has an extensive both athletics, program, as well as a community interest in some of the things you do on campus for theater and et cetera. How is that going to be affected?
Well, fortunately, we have very few venues that are actually in this historic district or the academic core. So the football stadium and other athletic fields are not in this area. So it's a non-issue for them. We do have a small auditorium in that area where there are performances, but people are accustomed to not being able to park there now. So we don't think that's going to be too much of an issue or a challenge. The big issue is not about accessing that area as it will be getting through and around it on football game days. As you can imagine, before games and after games, the traffic is like it is anywhere else where there's a major athletic event. And if we have fewer ways to get around, then it's going to push that traffic onto the remaining roads, and it's going to get a little bit tougher. We've solved it for buses because we've created an express lane on our campus for buses, and we hope that by marketing that and by people seeing how efficient that is, that they'll use it next time. We've been doing that for a couple of years. So far, so good.
That's great. Thanks, Scott. Justin, any other questions?
We do. We have a comment/question from Carrie Red. Carrie, did you want to unmute and ask your question to both Sam and Scott?
Certainly, and great presentation, Scott. We have two universities, three in southeastern Connecticut, all of which show the same signs that you and both Sam have articulated here in this presentation. However, our data, when we launched new transit systems that included microtransit, has shown that the seniors and the disenfranchised has not embraced the transit systems. And I'm wondering what you put together in terms of a strategy, whether it was marketing, targeted demographics, in order to energize those segments of the population to utilize these public services, or is that not an issue that you experience either at Duke or at the University of Florida?
Scott, you want to take UF first, and then I'll hit that from a Duke perspective and some of the other campuses?
Sure. I can tell you that one of the things, again, I don't think some of my university colleagues will be surprised to hear this, but one of the things that drives students to transit is the inconvenience of parking. It may be the best bad option for many of them. So if you're an undergraduate living off campus, your parking option is going to be to park in our park and ride lots, which are remote, which require a connecting bus ride. So we kind of suggest to those students, since you've got to ride the bus anyway from the park and ride lot, and there's another bus that originates right from your apartment complex or passes your complex, you can take a one-seat ride to campus rather than park and ride. So I think that, I'd like to have more carrots than sticks, but I think the stick is the biggest factor there. The parking we don't make parking convenient for them. I also think that this change will be profound. This change will have an impact to bus riders because their routes and service will be different, and it will have an impact to drivers because their ability to travel through the campus will be different. And Sam mentioned he's working with us. One of the things he's working on is to help us reimagine what the transit needs to look like here. We're also working very closely with our local transit authority to figure out how the services we purchase from them, the bus services we purchase from them, and the in-house services that we provide on campus will work together, will coordinate. For example, it's been suggested that maybe the transit company ought to just bring students to the edge of campus and drop them there, and we take it over from there. And while there is some compelling reasons to consider that, it turns some one-seat rides into two-seat rides and maybe makes transit less desirable. Yeah. So we are exploring a number of different models where there's some things we like, some things we don't. And I would like to tell you that we've got it all licked right now, but I think that we're going to watch as these changes occur and we're going to adapt with them. And I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate if you can share some of that data so I can share that with our Council of Government members as well. Thank you.
I can do that.
Thanks, Kerry. Good to see you.
It's been a long time, Sam.
It has.
Years here. Yeah.
It has.
Yeah. My hat's off to Tina and the rest of the folks up at IPMI. I changed my email address, and I think everyone thought I was hiding under a rock.
Well, we look forward to seeing you in Tampa then.
I've already registered, and hopefully, if my lovely bride is feeling well, she'll be accompanying us as always.
Oh, that'd be great to see both of you then. Thank you. Justin, any more questions?
Yes, Sylvia had a question. Sylvia, did you want to unmute and ask your question live to Sam and Scott?
Hi, Sam and Scott. I'm Sylvia. I was former parking manager of Chicago State University, and it always comes up with finance needs the revenue. We were under the police, so they need their cars and now their drones and everything. And I feel your pain. It sounds like a great idea on paper, but when especially administration has to walk, and that's going to be, you've covered that. But I really want to know, how are you balancing losing that revenue and the benefit of having all these last mobility, last mile options?
Two answers to your question. First, there were a number of closed door shouting matches We all came out on the same page, but there were plenty. There were plenty of, are you kidding me? You must be crazy. How are we going to make this work, and how are we going to sell this? Those conversations absolutely happened. And again, when we came out of the room, we were all on the same page, truly. As far as the revenue is concerned, there's no revenue loss to us because we sell parking permits as, I hate this term, but our students call them hunting licenses. So if the hunting ground shrinks, we still sell the same number of permits. So we won't see a revenue loss. We may see a revenue loss if parking becomes less desirable and bus service becomes better and students leave parking and go to the buses, but we would consider that a good problem.
Yeah, Sylvia, that's a great, thank you, Scott. Great response. Yeah, I understand the challenges there. I mean, you're offsetting one, and maybe with, especially with, if Scott says, if there's a change to the parking demand and this becomes affordable and luxurious and people now start to take advantage of it, you're going to lose some of that. And especially if you're in cases where some of that parking revenue is to provide debt service for some of your facilities, then that gets to be a really, really interesting discussion. Scott's done an incredible job down there of managing that, keeping his reserves, wink, wink, nod, nod, and then trying to make sure that he has some capital to infuse into other things if he can. But you're highlighting a point that I think that everybody's going to be challenged with. Is obviously everybody from COVID-19 with parking revenue down, and of course, transportation in most institutions is an expense unless you have a student fee. So I think that's going to be a continued challenge as we evolve in this process.
Especially when you brought up the point about sustainability. So that's what I meant. Thank you very much. Great.
Very welcome.
All right, Sam, the next question is going to come from Rachel Yoka.
You can't talk about sustainability without me asking a question. So,
in conclusion, no, just kidding.
Hey, I got a couple more minutes of your time here. So it's interesting. My college experience was on a quad. I didn't own a car because it was more of a nightmare to park, and I didn't need it. I was in downtown DC. Didn't need it, right? So when you sort of grow up in that environment, it's interesting to take this, more commuter campus layout into that world of the quad. Penn did it many years ago, right? Brought in that, closed off the streets, brought it in. Did you guys, first part of my question is, did you look at some of those other universities to see what are those elements that are, really sort of successful in creating that college feel? Because the money part is where you're attracting students. It's a highly competitive environment. Highly competitive. My daughter is almost college age. We get a pound of mail every single day for universities I've never heard of. Mm-hmm. So how does the sustainability piece and sort of creating that environment go to being competitive in a very competitive marketplace that's really kind of unknown because people can do education virtually again, right?
Yeah. The sustainability question is huge because we are different here in Florida. I'm not from Florida. I'm from Philadelphia. I was riding a train and a subway when I was 11 years old, and the bus was every day. So it was no big deal. But you need to understand that the typical student who comes to the University of Florida lives in Florida, never has ridden a bus in their lives, not once. They got a car for their 16th birthday and they drove to high school every day and parked across the street. And now they come here for preview, which is our orientation session. And we kind of push this message, bring a car if you must. And, the parent is saying, my student doesn't need to bring a car, right? With the head going side to side, and the student is right behind them with the head going up and down, So I have taken many students on their first bus ride, which blows me away because, again, that's not my experience and that's not my culture. So it is really tough to convince our Florida students to leave their cars at home or leave their cars off campus and try the bus. And I must go back to my metaphor before. It's the stick, not the carrot, that gets them to make their first bus ride. It's, I can't get there from here unless I ride this stinking bus. So they do it. And what they find out is that it's not so bad, and it's to an extent social, in that there are other students on the bus that they can chat with. They can, be on their phone or do their email or listen to their music, and it's not so bad. So our sustainability win is one student at a time, and it is literally that way.
Rachel, you bring up a series of great points there. One is the competition for the student, right? And what are going to be those separating factors? Duke, obviously most people think of as a Duke as a, very not just well-funded institution, but generally speaking, a fairly affluent crowd that goes to university or to Duke University. So, many schools have addressed that through, not letting freshmen bring cars to campus and doing some things at the beginning of a cycle to get people, as Scott said, to use some of the other means on campus, pedestrian, scooter, which are becoming extremely popular, and Scott fights that battle every day down there, right? And trying to encourage people and motivate people that these accessible means actually make your life better, right? And though you may not have use of that vehicle, there are other things that you can do, as Scott said. So you kind of play that game of the mental game of, the productive time and, chatting with your friends on campus at a bus, or maybe listening to music or whatever it is, or doing some homework or whatever it is. So that shift is going to continue to be. And you also think about it, no disrespect to people in university settings, you think of cycles with students, right? It's every 4 years, give or take, right? And so you try and manifest slow changes over time to evolve people to this one. Unfortunately, Rach, this one's hitting us hard and it's hitting us quickly. And so to re-energize the communities in a way that we need to do to not just make it attractive, but not lose that community atmosphere is going to be a challenge, no doubt.
I'll add one more thing, and that is there are a lot of very motivated, enthusiastic student leaders who are sustainability focused and oriented. And for those who, won't buy in and won't participate, there is a core group that are really on board. They're all about waste management on our campus. They're all about how we can reduce miles. They let me know if they've seen some vehicle idling too long. So we have some people who are really passionate about that, and it's not just our division of sustainability.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think tying it to your overall climate change or your mission reductions targets that a lot of the universities participate in, and your health and wellness programming, bike, walk, scooter, skateboard.
Glad you said that, Rachel, because when you think about it, 2009, 617 university presidents signed a climate action plan, all with targets to be carbon neutral by 2024 or some time frame. So at Duke, mine was a 6% reduction in transportation. Mm-hmm. That literally meant getting people out of single occupancy. 77% of the people that came to Duke University, mostly staff and faculty, drove in a single occupancy vehicle by themselves, right? So what I was trying to accomplish by doing that, get you to campus, that's fine. You're going to continue to do that. Once you get on campus, I don't want you to move that car again. And so the challenge, as you said, and I know, Scott, most of our sustainability initiatives on any campus are not well funded. So you put pressure on the operational units like Scott to find ways to accomplish that vehicle to get those programs can be funded and those initiatives can take place. But I think that, as Scott has indicated, there's so many more people who are now in tune with the message of, what it means to be carbon neutral, and let's get the emissions out of the atmosphere and start to clean up our environment. You have to capitalize on those opportunities and the momentum that they present.
Yeah, I might add, propose to take down the wrong tree on campus and you really see the sustainability army come out.
All right. I want to remind everybody, if you do have questions for Sam and Scott, please go ahead and queue them up into the chat. I know that we have some university folks on here that might be able to give Scott some ideas on how to be more of a environmentally sustainable organization. So please feel free to add into the conversation. Sam, I don't see any. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was just to Scott's story. I remember I was at visiting one of my former students at the University of California at Berkeley, and they were going to take down this 100-year elm tree, excuse me, right outside the football stadium because they wanted to clear a passageway and have more pedestrian-free zones around that. And literally, students reacted so viscerally that they were actually living in the tree and stayed in the tree so that the tree would not get cut down, and put up enough opposition for the university to have to think about different ways to accomplish the same objective.
Well, I think you have a tremendous asset in your highly engaged, educated, and aware student body. You know what I mean? Like, really can be used for good, right? So that's actually really interesting. I don't know if other folks have, you know what I mean, have sort of mobilized, say, around any of those kind of initiatives, right? Could be in a different department, but really interesting possibilities.
What's really key about it is students can influence other students' behavior better than we can.
Sure.
Yeah.
Can I add one quick note?
Yeah.
Because you were like all about the messaging. I think I love that, because you could always put like one parking space equals how many trees that you saved and things like that for your messaging.
Great idea.
All right. Well, there's no more questions for Sam and Scott. I want to say thank you very much to them for today's presentation.
Thanks to everyone out there. Certainly appreciate it. And, you know, it's always a pleasure to work with the IPMI community on initiatives like this. So we thank you for your help. I thank you from my Transloc, sponsorship people and what that happened. And to any time to work with my friend and colleague, Scott Fox, is always a pleasure. So it's been an absolute joy getting this prepared. Hopefully we have a message today that resonates with people and gives people an opportunity to think about some of the changes that are coming and maybe be a little bit more proactive as a result of what they see coming, and having experiences like this I think can be helpful.
It's mutual. It's a pleasure to work with you, Sam, and with all of you from IPI and IPMI. And I can't wait to see all of you in Tampa. See all of you, your entire face. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the great conversation. And thank you to Transloc for sponsoring today's Learning Lab. We will post the recording of today's session within a few days. So thank you for joining us today. You may now disconnect.